I thought the gate was just an annoying HOA rule. I had no idea it was hiding something much bigger. A few years ago, I bought a quiet piece of rural property outside a growing suburban community. The land had been in my family for decades, but I finally decided to build a small home there and spend more time away from the city. There was one problem. A few months after I moved in, I noticed a large metal gate across an old access road near the edge of my property. The gate had an HOA sign on it. I called the HOA office and asked why they had placed a gate on my land. Their president gave me a simple answer. That road belongs to the community. I told her that according to my deed and property survey, it didn't. She disagreed. Then she sent me a letter demanding that I stop using the road. I didn't argue. Instead, I pulled out my property records. The survey clearly showed the road running across my land. There was no HOA easement listed, no access agreement, nothing. So I sent the HOA copies of the documents and asked them to remove the gate. They refused. Their president claimed the HOA had been using the road for years, which supposedly gave them the right to continue using it. That wasn't how property ownership worked. But instead of fighting with them, I decided to investigate. I contacted the county records office and requested every document connected to the road. That's when things became interesting. The original property map showed the road as a private access route, but years later, an HOA development map suddenly showed the same road as a community access road. Someone had changed the map. The question was who and why. I contacted a local surveyor and asked him to compare the original records with the current HOA map. His conclusion was clear. The HOA's map didn't match the recorded property boundaries. The gate was sitting on my land. At that point, I decided the gate had to go. One morning, I brought in a licensed contractor and had the gate carefully removed from my property. No confrontation, no threats, just a legal property owner removing an unauthorized obstruction from his own land. But before we could finish, a police cruiser arrived. An officer stepped out and approached me. He said the HOA had reported that I was destroying community property. I showed him my deed. Then I showed him the survey. The officer examined everything carefully. He didn't immediately take sides. Instead, he asked the HOA representative who had arrived with him to provide proof that the gate belonged to the community. The representative couldn't produce a deed. He couldn't produce an easement. He couldn't produce an access agreement. He only had the HOA map. The officer looked at it. Then he looked at my survey. Something clearly didn't add up. The officer asked, "Why is the HOA map different from the county record?" Nobody answered. Then he noticed something else. The gate wasn't simply blocking my driveway. It was positioned directly beside an old utility access area. The officer walked around the gate and inspected the ground. Behind it was a narrow dirt path leading toward an abandoned storage structure. He asked the HOA representative what was inside. The representative suddenly became nervous. He said it was private community equipment, but the officer wasn't convinced. He checked the county records again. The storage structure wasn't listed as HOA property. Neither was the surrounding land. Then the officer noticed an old survey marker buried near the structure. He called me over. The marker matched the boundaries shown on my original survey. That meant the entire area behind the gate was actually part of my property. The HOA had been maintaining a gate on my land and using it to control access to an area they didn't own. But why? A follow-up record search finally answered the question. Years earlier, the HOA had planned to build an additional access road through the area. The project never received the required property agreement. Instead of abandoning the plan, someone had continued treating the road as if it belonged to the community. The gate had effectively become a way to control access to land that wasn't theirs. The police officer told the HOA representative that this was now a civil property dispute and that they needed to stop interfering with my property unless they could provide valid legal documentation. The gate was removed completely. The old access road became part of my property again, and the HOA had to correct its internal records. I never want to fight with the neighborhood. I just wanted my land left alone. But the experience taught me something important. When someone claims they have a right to use your property, don't rely on their confidence. Check the deed. Check the survey. Check the recorded records. because a sign on a gate doesn't determine who owns the land behind it. The documents do. And sometimes, removing one little gate can uncover an entire story that someone hoped would stay hidden. If you enjoyed this HOA story, subscribe, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from.